Holland. Holland is one of the top 10 countries that contribute to food waste. Did you know the utmost nutritious foods, fruits and vegetables retain the highest food wastage rate? Holland is also one of the largest producers of fresh fruits and vegetables. However, around a third of that waste materializes within the production stage. The food production stage is a hidden aspect from the consumer's mindset. This is why I intend to focus here. My goal is to minimize the loss of fruit and vegetable crops in Holland, prioritizing the top most produced ones, which are tomatoes and onions. My challenge is to talk to experts and visit farms to unravel the fundamental complications that prevent the crops from going through the production stage. Early blight. One of the most common pathogens that targets to infect tomatoes. It produces yellow rings around the plant. Subsequently, it spreads throughout the entire plant. What triggers this pathogen? Insects, high temperature, poor irrigation. However, the numerous amount of infected crops is not caused by the trigger. It is determined by the pathogen spreading among other crops. Farmers tend to neglect to remove the early blights immediately, and they should not regrow new crops at the corresponding area. The pathogen disperses around its origin. Powdery mildew. It is a type of fungi that grows on tomatoes. White spots will be detected and infecting the tomato to an inedible form. What causes it? There are two main factors that contribute to this infection. Firstly, the plant may be deprived from airflow, and the second culprit is high humidity. However, both factors are more highly to emanate from the use of greenhouses. Greenhouses restrict airflow and produces high humidity. Onion fly, a cosmopolitan pest of crops. The fly lays eggs on the onion, hatching into baby maggots. The maggots gradually devour the base and the roots of the onion. To distinguish if the maggots are feeding on the plant, signs of yellow dropping leaves transpire. Unfortunately, it is pretty surprising that there is no chemical available for farmers in the European Union. The current line of defense is to occlude flies from the plants. Flies are attracted to the strong scent of onions. This normally occurs when the onions are rotten or infected by other pathogens. Neck rot, a type of fungus. The infection happens in the exposed succulent tissue. Symptoms are first seen as a softening of the tissues around the neck of the bulb. It infects the tissue and becomes sunken, soft, and turns into a brownish-gray color. These symptoms progress gradually to the base of the bulb. The infection speeds rapidly in a humid condition. There are a number of factors that contribute to the disease, such as the onions are not matured well before harvest, continuing irrigation to allow tops to dry down as harvest time approaches, neglecting to undercut and windrow onions until inside neck tissues are dry before topping and storing. After talking to experts, next was to enter and explore the agriculture framework from the farmer's perspective. This was achieved through questioning and observing farmers' activities. Unfortunately, only an onion farm was visited. Do they know the main causes of crop loss? Farmers have confirmed that the main causes of onion crop loss are indeed pathogens. They mentioned that flies attack the onions and there is another disease that causes the onions to turn soft and brown. Do they know the exact causes of pathogens? They do. They mentioned that the flies come in when the crops start to produce smell, so the smell would normally be produced from rotten or infected crops. And to prevent neck rot, you just have to make sure it must be dried before harvesting. Farmers' main daily activities. The farmers spend most of their time sustaining and nourishing their crops, such as regulating the amount of irrigation and maintaining the soil fertility. They also devote a lot of time to planting new crops and identifying mature onions, then harvesting them. How farmers spot infected crops. The farmers walked around the field to spot infected crops or potential infected crops. There were a few farmers each in charge of their own district. You required a good pair of eyesight to spot the signs of the pathogen, such as the maggot at the base and the roots of the onions and yellow leaves falling off. This was a challenging task as it utilizes precision to identify the small details and time, as there is an ample amount of crops to survey. The farmers did not seem to look at each crop meticulously. It was more of a scan through, searching for fully infected ones rather than ones that have just started being infected. They're more difficult to spot. How farmers would prevent the infection. Like the farmer mentioned earlier, he would ensure the onion crops are dried before harvesting. The farmers had no chemical treatment to stop or prevent the pathogens from pervading and infecting other crops. Hence, the only option the farmer has is to remove the infected crops from the surrounding. The farmers displayed signs of struggling as it is a monotonous job and requires care. It is also very labor intensive to pick up the crops and discard them. In conclusion, the findings from both the researcher and farmer has revealed that the main complication concerning tomato and onion crop loss are pathogens. The interesting finding was from the farmer's perspective. Farmers tend to prioritize on nurturing healthy crops and devote less focus salvaging potential infected crops. Based on my observation, this was due to three main reasons. There is no chemical treatment to impede the infection from stopping. The removal of potential infected crops is very labor intensive. And finally, the logistics of focusing on healthy crops is far more worth it than trying to salvage potential infected crops. However, with the rise of the global population, farmers should consider that the ample amount of waste could be our future food. Further step. This project was just the first step of exploring the crop loss industry. Ultimately, more farm research must be done. Looking at it from a sustainable point of view, should farmers start to prioritize on saving the amount of crop loss, as it could bring a positive impact to the environment? And is devoting more time and resources to it worth it? Also, another challenge would be to focus upon research with chemists to develop a chemical treatment to stop pathogens from spreading.